What does it take to craft a great offer that will inspire your donor to make a transformational gift? Today, you will hear from legendary fundraising copywriter, editor, and author, Tom Ahern. Richard and I ask him what will make an offer so compelling a donor can't resist it. We also ask him about what nonprofits get right about fundraising and where they struggle. Tom doesn't mince words. He tells it like it is. Hear why Tom is such a master at it. After listening to him, you'll want to read every book he's ever written on fundraising.
Welcome to the Nothing But Major Gifts podcast from Veritas Group, featuring Richard Perry and Jeff Schreifels. Twice a month, we bring you the latest and best thinking about major gift fundraising, so you can develop authentic relationships with your major donors. Here are your hosts, Richard and Jeff.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us. Richard, we have a great guest today, don't we?
A great guest. Oh, no, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. And I'm glad he could kind of squeeze us into the schedule.
Oh, I know. The guy is busy. He's all over the place. He's in Europe. He's all over the place. Anyway, exactly. We want to introduce to you Tom Ahern. And Tom, you have been amazing. We have read your work. We've been with you at conferences, and love the work that you've been doing and promoting donor centricity. And just welcome to the podcast, and thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Let me send that Valentine back to you both because of your formative, Richard being one of the founders of the Domain Group, and Jeff, you may, I don't know whether you were a founder, but you certainly were an important figure there. And the Domain Group taught me a lot about attitude, among other things, but of course also about technique. The attitude part was just, you got to take this really seriously. You got to always be looking for better ways. You got to test things. Don't be afraid to take risks. Something that worked today may not work tomorrow, et cetera, et cetera. It was formative for me. You were the most serious people I encountered in the, domain of donor communications when I was migrating into the nonprofit world out of the for-profit commercial world.
Yeah. Well, you, speaking of the for-profit, that's where you started. You were a copywriter, marketer, award-winning marketer. And you've really only been doing nonprofit work for around 15 or so years. So I'm really interested, what compelled you to actually get into the nonprofit work?
Yeah, well, my wife compelled me, but that was about it. Simone Joyaux, my wife, she's a consultant. She's been doing it since '88, fundraising and board development. And she had clients. They needed stuff. They didn't know anybody. And she just asked, can you help them? Could I write, for instance, a direct mail appeal or something like that? And I said, well, I'm a trained copywriter for sales, but I will give it a shot. And I started reading, and I didn't want to make mistakes, and that's part of the motivation of every professional I know who's any good. It's like I do not want to make a mistake. I do not want to let people down, and so you go to extremes in order to be prepared. And so I read for about 6 months before I really got into anything nonprofit or fundraising oriented. And then we started, just started working on stuff. And it became over time. Simone became my biggest client for a while. I'm an independent copywriter. I had a small ad agency with a partner. When we broke that up because she was hired away by one of our clients, I decided I didn't really want to manage people. I was not very good at it, so I just wanted to stay away from it. And so I've been a sole provider since then. Anyway, coming into nonprofit world was a little confusing at first for me because I couldn't see why they were doing things the way they were doing them. And they, for instance, we always want to talk about their programs, and in the marketing copywriting world, that's a feature, not a benefit. And you sell benefits, not features. So it's kind of talking about the wrong thing right from the start. Mm-hmm. And the other thing they didn't seem to have a clear grasp on was who was the customer of fundraisers and fundraising. And I didn't know either. It took me years, but eventually it kind of, the fogs dissipated, and I saw that the donor was your customer if you were a fundraiser. And so you would, start to study the donor and try to make, create some level of intimacy or something, although I think even that's a little transactional. What I'm trying to create with the donors now in all the writing I'm doing for clients is I want them to feel joyful. I want them to feel really good about what they're doing and what they could do and so forth. And, we've gotten to the point where sometimes the appeal letters that are working the best hardly mention the client at all. Mm-hmm. They talk mostly about the impact of you as a donor through your giving, through your generosity, and then we start throwing all those adjectives at them and so forth.
I mean, that's the interesting thing about fundraising done right, Tom, is it's actually not about the vehicle of getting help or the process of giving the help or the assistance. It's the magic that happens when the donor is expressing themselves through the organization and then addressing the need or the problem on the planet. And that's the emphasis that Jeff and I have and all that. Let me ask you a question about nonprofits in general. What do you think they're doing right with donors? And then when you get done with that, what are they doing wrong? And then what should we do to fix it, in your opinion?
Okay, so let's start with the right. The right, to me, is the gradual acceptance of the basic notion of what's called donor centricity, what marketers would call customer centricity. And it's getting, when I say basic acceptance, this is about as far as it's gone, except in certain places. Right now, I can tell you, we've got some unbelievably good creative houses that are totally donor-centered. Blue Frog in London, Asterisk in Ireland, Pareto in Australia, Agents of Good in Canada, True Sense in the USA, and you guys, of course. But those are the boutique agencies. And I recently, and I'm going to name any names here, I'll just say it was for a Canadian client. And they brought in the appeal that they are, kind of their control for acquiring donors. And I had one I had written for a similar kind of nonprofit. And so we're testing them head to head. But what surprised me, because the control was written by a very good agency, again, no name, but it was kind of, off the shelf, industrial strength, direct mail that, it did all the things that were the right things to do if you were fundraising through direct mail in the 1990s. And, before the mailbox kind of got jammed with all sorts of other appeals that looked just like it. It was a little surprising just to see that donor centricity basically hadn't become part of the paint box for this very good agency that gets decent results. So there's still a lot of work to do, and you still find people, scratching their heads. And to me, it's kind of, well, you do understand that it's just your brain talking to my brain, trying to make something happen. Therefore, you really have to look beyond the credit card and talk to what's in that head. what is wrong? Okay, so what's wrong? Well, one of the quick fixes, if we had a magic wand and we could just wave it, in our industry, would be the approval process would get straightened out, would get thrown out probably for the most part. What I've spent an entire career defending against is the approval process. I write a lot of cases for support for capital campaigns. Mm-hmm. And first question for any new client is, what's your approval process? Because if it is not linear, for one thing, so you once you pass somebody says, okay, that draft is good or good enough, so we can go to the next stage. If you don't make that process linear, you make it a loop. It just keeps looping back and back and back. And somebody comes in late and they want to put their stamp on it. It's a nightmare. Now, sometimes it's a lucrative nightmare. I mean, I've had a client the last couple of years. They spent $50,000 on getting a preliminary case put together. Mm-hmm. Wow. It was for $1 billion campaign, but still, it took a year and a half. And I was working on it through, not every day, but through a year and a half. I was working on it. The billing finally amounted to $50,000. By the time we got to the point where everybody said, "Oh yeah, we can work with this," and that was a very deep approval process. I mean, part of it was you had to talk to the president and the dean. It was university, and blah 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 blah.
It's kind of fundraising by fundraising by committee, isn't it?
Fundraising by committee is, yeah, and as we all, most of us have heard, committees are not the secret weapon for success. I mean, I've seen committees, actually. I just saw one in my own world of a client in an animal shelter, and they're doing a capital campaign, I don't know, $20 million or something. They're going to build a new hospital, and they have a committee, but the committee and I met before anything was written, and we had a brainstorming session about messaging. And so we met for 3 hours in an afternoon. Everybody was there, the board chair, the next in line, the staff, the executive director, the fundraiser, everybody was in that room. And all I was doing was facilitating. So I'd ask my basic questions that one does with cases and have them provide the answers. And I'm covering flip charts. So it was because the process, they were inside my process right from the start, that when I provided them with the first draft case, they said, well, parts of this we love, but here's something we think we need to strengthen. And it was the enemy. Mm-hmm. And that was great, because you have to have an enemy for the donor to defeat, as I learned from Stephen Pidgeon's book, and a lot of other people too. I mean, again, we're back to neuroscience. And so they came up with a stronger enemy, which was great. So, sometimes committees work just fine, but that is not standard. Mostly they screw everything up because they're just a group of people that have absolutely no training.
I was just going through a list of reasons, interesting things that people say to you when you're trying to do effective fundraising, like, well, we really can't have urgency to that thing. It's way too urgent. This should not. And so we're basically saying back, well, now if it's not urgent, then why do you need the money? Or you don't want to get emotional about that. You gotta turn the volume down on the emotion, and as if there's some kind of non-human activity that we're trying to address here. I mean, in terms of
yeah. And institutions are some of the worst, because they think that the same rules that apply to building image and reputation, public relations, and stuff like that apply to fundraising. And basically, maybe 2%. The rest of it, no, It just doesn't matter. The idea that you're going to convince me to make a gift because of how great your staff is and how great your work is, well, maybe that may actually play for a major or a mid-tier donor where you're moving them up, something like that. Because as a donor stays with you, if you're that lucky, and the donor does stay with you, they will begin to appreciate the journey that the mission is on, not your staff necessarily, although the staff can be very interesting. I just got back from speaking to all the Save the Children's in the world in Madrid. And wow, these people are, shocking. They're shockingly dedicated to the work they're doing, which is shockingly hard work.
Well, let me ask you something. Going back to a bit, because you were talking about offers. So what do you think makes an offer compelling? Like what makes it compelling, and why is it so hard to get that information? Because in major gifts, Jeff and I in our team are always talking about you need to have an effective donor offer for a major donor to engage with. But what makes it compelling, and why is it hard to make to get that information?
That is an interesting question that I encountered last summer. I was at a university teaching in a master's program that was for fundraisers, right? And I was brought in to talk about donor communications. And it was a 3-day or 2.5-day thing, and we were together 8 hours a day, blah, blah, blah. And so we did a lot of in-class exercises. And these were all mid-career professionals in there getting their masters and, working for institutions and stuff like that, quite accomplished. And yet, when we got to, let's do your case for support. And for instance, who's the enemy would be one of the considerations in a case. They were just puzzled. They just couldn't get it. And and it surprised me. And I still don't have I don't know why that was the case, unless it's just so internalized that they don't articulate it, but they know it, or something like that. But we're having serious problems with that particular question. What's your case? Now, the case is your offer in a capital campaign. And in a direct mail, your offer is for $2.35. You can feed a child for a day, food for the poor or something like that. But in a capital campaign, the basic offer is, you want to be part of this? And or not is the option. But most of the case I just finished and it has been approved and will be going out into the world starts with a picture of a puppy and a kitten on the cover, and it just says they need your help for something big. That's it. That's the whole cover with a logo. And but it's the puppy and kitten with eye contact, of course, big eyes, staring at you, asking that question. And because we know actually from Dan Hill and other people that are popularizers of neuroscience that people basically make their initial decision within a couple of seconds. And so all I'm thinking about when they're looking at that cover is, what's going to happen in the first couple of seconds? Well, I'm going to have a puppy and I'm going to have a kitten. And those two animals are going to be so cute that you just go, aw. And they are going to be making strong eye contact with you. And there's one question they want to ask. Will you help us? And that's it. That's, everything else, what the actual language is, doesn't matter because it could be anything. You can write the same thing 1,000 different ways. But I want to control those first couple of seconds because I want that decision to be half made before you start reading anything more.
Yeah. So here's a question on that, Tom. Let's say if you don't have a puppy or a kitten or a kid, let's say you have an arts group. How do you approach that and make it emotional?
Yeah, it's interesting that seems to puzzle arts groups, since emotion is what art is about, stirring up. It's like, I don't know. Sometimes I just stare at my clients because I just don't understand why can't. To answer that, I mean, yes, you don't need a puppy and a kitten. You need to, I'll go back to the oldest marketing formula I ever learned. It's the AIDA formula. You know that one? So A, attention, I, interest, D, desire, A, the last A, call to action. And, that's always under consideration as the structure. And in that structure, the most important thing, the first thing I give you isn't money. The first thing I give you is my attention. And these days, getting that attention is really tough because of the calamitous avalanche of messaging that is aimed at your head every day and that you're defending against every day, because otherwise you couldn't survive. We sort the incoming into two initial piles. One pile is stuff I can safely ignore, nothing bad happens to me. The other pile is stuff I cannot safely ignore because something bad will happen to me, and that's where your bills go. So everything else that a nonprofit is bringing into my world, everything they're bringing into my world, I can safely ignore. Therefore, you've got to figure out, how are you going to capture my interest within a second or two? And so, you're the arts. Everything you do is about capturing my attention and keeping me attentive. So you should know the answer to this. What would you do if it were a play? What would you do if it were a new exhibit? What would you do? How do you?
I mean, the thing that was interesting to me on this topic, like we had one community choir raising money, and it was like, well, what's the human and emotional compelling thing that we do? And I remember sitting in the audience of that one of the performances, and in the program, there was a person that had written a very emotional statement about how the music of this community choir had taken, and he wrote. I wish I had it in front of me, but he wrote a very eloquent thing that basically said, I listened to your music during some of the worst parts of my life, where I was into the darkest places, and your music lifted me and to a place of hope and optimism and healing. And so I said to these folks, I said, now there you go, there it is, right there. That's what the music does, and that's why we've got to keep providing it. And it was compelling. My goodness.
Yeah, no, actually, and of course, when you can tell a story like that, it gives people an angle. It's a surprise angle. They hadn't really thought about that, but then they relate that to their own life, and they've probably had those very dark moments too. And music may, obviously somebody's not going to give you a gift. They couldn't care less about music. So everybody who is giving you money is somebody who does care about music, and music has mattered to them. And music matters. Well, for instance, we just went on a little field trip, Simone and I, to Cleveland to visit the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because we always wanted to, and some time opened up on the calendar, so we popped out there from where we live on the East Coast and spent a day at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We had no idea going in how transformative an experience that would be. That in fact we, the realization was that we all kind of have a soundtrack of our lives that we've been listening to, and sometimes it's just in the elevator or in the car, or whatever. But there are songs that have moved you repeatedly over and over. And the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame just brought that idea to life for me. So, but in some ways, I couldn't have anticipated that. This is why, for one thing, site visits are usually a very good idea with capital campaigns, because you sort of have to get the tingle up your spine to find, so that door opens where you find a way to talk about it that isn't just the jargon and the stuff.
Yep. That's really good. Tom, now you've got a book that's just come out. You've written over 5 books. Tell our audience, tell our folks here, or major gift officers focused on mid-level, tell us why they should read it and what they're going to glean from it.
Yeah, I'm not so sure this is going to matter to major gift officers. What I tried to do in the latest book, If Only You'd Known, You Would Have Raised So Much More, that's the title of it, was to try to do some weed control. There is, in the nonprofit world, as you guys encounter all the time, I am sure, you can have people in positions of power like your boss, your executive director, the board chair, and so forth, committees, that their brains are stuffed with good intentions, but not a lot of understanding or knowledge. And so they have these urban myths in their head. I'm trying to kill the urban myths. That's what this book, there are 40, who is your donor? Because you'll hear, you need younger donors. Well, actually, there's a very good case that you don't need younger donors if you look at one financial fact.
Right.
And so, somebody has to say, no, this is wrong, and here's the right answer. And the way I did it, and it started as just a free PDF that I had on my website people could download. And it was based on years and years and years of presenting at conferences and then having someone come up and say, well, yeah, I really want to do that, but my boss won't let me. And it's like, then your boss is treating you as an idiot. And why do they not respect you? But then, it happened so often, it became clear that the one reason they didn't respect them was simply there's a culture of abuse in fundraising where people, you're going to do it my way because I am in charge. Yeah. And anyway, so, when I showed that to my publisher, that free PDF, he said, well, A, stop giving it away, and B, make it, expand it into a full book. So now there are 40 questions, and they answer all sorts of things one might not know, and they were world sourced, I must say. You guys are probably quoted in there. I tried. So
how can people get a copy? How can people get a copy of that book, Tom?
Yeah, right. Well, they should rush right out to Amazon.
All right.
Yeah.
What's your website so that people can go to that as well?
It's www.ahern, AHERN.com. Those
nice.
Spaces are in it.
Cool.
And folks, we want to give you a free offer as well. At Veritas, we have a great white paper for you called Building a Culture of Philanthropy, which I'm sure Tom has thought and written about as well. But we have a white paper called Building a Culture of Philanthropy that really will help you get to your boss if they're having a problem with how to do major gifts, support major gifts or mid-level giving, or talking about compelling need or using emotion, all of those things. Having a culture of philanthropy within your organization will address all of that. So you can go to veritasgroup.com and download that from our download tab, and that white paper is sitting there ready for you. So Tom, I want to thank you for joining us today and waxing eloquently, and thank you for everything that you are doing for the industry, for calling us out, for pushing the donor-centric way, and all your good work. So thank you for
keeping us on point in terms of the narrative and the importance of being donor-centered. It's very, very good thinking, and we're very pleased that you honored us with your presence on this podcast. Thank you.
Guys, it's been a great pleasure. And thank you for what you have done for my understanding. As dim as it may be, a lot of my best insights started with you guys. So.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Nothing But Major Gifts podcast from Veritas Group. Richard and Jeff also write an ongoing blog that you can subscribe to for free at veritasgroup.com. Please join us again next time.